want to introduce our friend, Curtis Zehner from Atlanta. I call it Atlanta. He's repping the hat and the team
Always.
that we hate. Curtis is the new senior pastor at a church down there called Crosspoint Christian. It's an older church, right? 60 years or something?
60 years this past September. Yep.
60 years. And you don't look a day over 50, but the church is 60 years old. And he's the senior pastor there. And we engaged with him, almost a couple years ago at this point.
Almost 2 years, yeah.
So welcome.
Thanks, Dave. I'm so glad to be here, man. Excited.
And he has a voice for radio or podcasting.
Well, we were talking about that before we went live today.
See?
My dad was in radio for years until he got the call to go into ministry. I quit the radio biz and became a preacher, a senior minister. And I tried to do that, but didn't make it past freshman year.
All right.
Before I became a preacher.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody, you can find the chat window there. You can drop a question as we go. And but we're going to talk about what it's like to do residency at a church of a couple hundred, 300, I think, as we say. Crosspoint Christian Church. Before we do that, Curtis, I always ask the question of everyone we have on here on the first Thursday of every month. What were you doing? Tell us about Curtis, age 20 to 25. What was the path for you?
Age 20 to 25. Oh man. Well, it took me 10 years to get my degree. So I was somewhere between freshman year and junior year, somewhere in there. I got married at 23. So I was working here at Crosspoint between 21 and 22. As part of a program with my school. I was kind of a resident, but they called me an intern and I was getting some class credit for it. Then I moved to Kentucky, did an internship for 2 years at Southeast Christian in Louisville.
Okay.
We got married in that time. And then, 25, I guess I was just finishing that up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you wanted to stay or you didn't want to stay and you came back? Or how did you get back to Crosspoint?
It was difficult. I did not want to come back home to where I grew up. That's for sure. Right. I thought I wanted to stay at Southeast, man. I mean, like at that point in my life, I was like, who wouldn't want to stay here? Right.
Were you doing students or kids or what were you doing there?
I was doing middle school ministry on a team of about 6 people. Yeah. And they had given me a lot of responsibility as a young guy. It was my second year of residency there. And at the end of my residency, there just wasn't a place for me. And, that was tough. I was unemployed for like 9 months. I actually tried to get into radio again. And I did a couple audiobooks in that time. I made a little bit of money recording audiobooks for Amazon. That was exciting.
Listen to them? You ever just get them out and listen to them?
No, there was one comment on like an Amazon review about how terrible the book was. I couldn't go back and listen to it. It wasn't necessarily about the voice on it, but Anyway, so we moved to Birmingham, Alabama. My wife was pregnant, and I didn't have a job, and so I did what every young guy wants to do. I moved into my in-laws' basement. That was awesome. So I immediately started working at Chick-fil-A after we moved. Was there? Chick-fil-A. Yeah. Well, every pastor.
Say you tended bar or you worked at a motorcycle shop or something.
It probably would have been more fun.
Pregnant wife living in the in-laws' basement.
Yeah.
Working at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, man.
My pleasure.
And during that time, the church here, Crosspoint, they were in talks with me about coming back home. But man, I was fighting it hard. I did not want to do it. But then the chairman of the board.
Why were you fighting that, Curtis?
Because it was home. I didn't want to come back. Full disclosure, like my dad and I, we had an argument about this very idea a year before. So that wasn't sitting well.
And what was your dad doing at that time?
He was the senior minister here. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, I was that had to be part of it. Like you You didn't want to be the person that got the easy job working for your dad.
Yeah.
You want to get your own thing.
I did. I did. And it was
understandable.
Yeah, it was my own pride, my own arrogance that we had even had an argument to begin with. And, relationship is fine and all that good stuff. But I came back, the chairman of the board was like, dude, God's going to do this thing or he's not. So we did. We came back and we moved into my parents' house.
Dude, that might be a first. I don't think I've heard of that.
We went from one house to another.
Whose basement was better?
Oh, my in-laws.
In-laws? Yeah. Did it squeak as they walked upstairs? Did you hear the...
No, it was very quiet, very private. Man. Yeah, it was nice. They lived on a little lake in their neighborhood, and so right out the back door, it was nice.
Okay. Wow.
So anyway,
into your parents' basement.
Well, my parents don't have a basement; they have a bonus room. So we were only there for a month, but get this, right? We had the baby in Birmingham, my firstborn. A month later, we moved into my parents' house. That's a 3-hour travel distance. Yeah. And then a month after that, we signed our first mortgage and moved into our current home. That's a lot to happen.
Yeah. And started new job.
Yeah. Well, old job. Because I had worked here before. Yes. It was just, I'm a full-time guy now, right?
Okay. And what year was that, Curtis? So we're up to what at this point?
2018.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you're the associate catch-all.
Absolutely.
Students doing everything. Playing some guitar, leading some worship.
Exactly. On stage most weekends, either playing drums, guitar, bass, whatever. I'm a preacher's kid. So you have.
In 2018, what was the average weekend attendance, do you think? Do you remember?
Oh, you know what? I don't know that.
Less than today?
It was probably close to what we are today.
Okay. All right.
About attendance, I would say probably around the 230 mark.
Okay. All right.
Okay. And then COVID happened.
Oh, yes.
Was happy to be here through that. No, but legitimately was happy to be here because we were close to family. And that was about the time when our attitudes shifted.
Okay.
And we stopped mourning where we were not and began to settle into where we are. Right. That was about 2 years into the job.
Okay.
I was also in school. I had to go back and get my degree as part of the agreement. So I was finishing up online with Lincoln Christian, RIP.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. But yeah.
Okay.
So here we are.
All right. So then you do the associate thing, and then you're on track to become the senior pastor. And then somehow you meet Leadership Pathway. Mm-hmm. What led you to start the conversation about residency? And Southeast, church of 20,000 or whatever, a lot. And, probably down there, 12 Stone in Atlanta.
Yep.
Andy Bright, Bill, they have been a huge influence on us. And some people. So some big churches doing residency, and then you get a whole Leadership Pathway. And you were like, yeah, we can do this. What was your mindset? I don't know how we met, or if you met Sean or Kristen first or me. I don't know how that happened. I don't remember. It seems like forever ago at this point. But how did that conversation start, and why did you do it? What was the motivation, I guess?
Right. So our worship leader of 17 years retired, and we hired a new worship leader in the fall of that year. Mm-hmm. And he didn't last 9 months, the new guy. And we were in crisis.
Met him. I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
At every church.
It was just like, what are we going to do? And so I was actually pursuing through Slingshot Group, trying to find some avenue of connection, whatever. And Sean Badir was the one that fielded my call. Yep. And was kind of like, hey, there's a thing called Leadership Pathway.
You should impersonate Sean for just a moment. How did Sean?
I can't. He's too cool. I literally cannot even.
Sean is the cool one.
Yeah, I can't. I don't have swag like Sean. So anyway, he told me about Leadership Pathway. Cool. And it sounded great from a financial standpoint, but
Right.
also from a development standpoint. Honestly, the
Right.
elders bought in immediately.
Okay. So here's where, so if we cut right now to Sean, and I think I remember Sean's like, well, everyone at Leaders, all of us, we meet a church, we hang up the phone, we tell the other people on the team, you're going to love these people. That's the first thing everyone says who is at Leadership Pathway. He says, you're going to love this guy. He works for his parents at a church of a couple hundred south of Atlanta. And I'm like, Sean, I don't think that are you sure, man? Like, he's like, yeah. You just got to understand. So I would say we have these things that we say, like we don't put worship residents, for example, which is where this is headed. We don't put worship residents in churches that don't have worship pastors. We don't put youth residents in a church that doesn't have a youth pastor. I'll say every week, I'm like, hey, after you hire a kids pastor, call us back. We'll help you get a kids resident, And except when we do.
Y'all were saying that at the time.
Except when we do.
Right.
And this is one of those instances after we talked and after everybody got in process. And so tell us about, I think you already had the person.
Leadership Pathway is why we decided we had the person. The young lady named Grace was home at the time, but she was enrolled at the Boston Conservatory at Berkeley.
Ooh.
Yeah. And had tremendous potential for ministry. But she was just pursuing music, man, with everything that she had. But because of COVID, she had to be home.
Okay.
And then found out that she couldn't go back to Boston because of some other life things, and that she was moving home for good, was giving up Berkeley.
Wow.
And, Leadership Pathway was like, we can find you a person, or if you got a person, which works even better, if there's somebody inside your church, let's do that thing with them. And Grace just fit all the qualifications.
Fantastic.
And she trusted me.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
How long had you known her?
She grew up here, man.
Okay.
She kind of has a similar story of mine, except her parents don't work for the church. She just grew up here, went through the children's ministry and the high school, middle school ministry, and was looking to get away from home, but God wanted her to be back home.
Sounds like another story I heard recently.
Yeah, very much so.
Pretty much. Okay, so she's there. We work the process. She starts.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, what are we doing? Tell us about the early days or the early weeks of figuring it out.
Mm-hmm. So at that time, we had my dad, senior minister, my mom is the children's minister. Wow. We have an office administrator, and myself. That's it. Right. So there was 4 of us on staff. I'm interested, Dave, you're on this new platform. I'm going to send out this poll real fast. Okay.
Okay.
I'm sending out a poll. I'm publishing the poll now. So,
there it is.
There you go. How big is your church staff? I'm just interested. 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 5 to 10 plus. Drop that in. The results should show momentarily. So we're a small staff. And then we all of a sudden bring Grace in as a part-time resident. She's not even a full employee for us, right? So she's working as a lifeguard to keep doing things, as well as doing the stuff for us on Sunday mornings. And Leadership Pathway preaches, if you don't have the leader in the ministry, then don't put the resident in. But we had nobody. Right.
Yeah.
So I had to come up with a plan for how we were going to train Grace, how we were going to develop her without an actual direct report in her department. So we came up with something. You want me to go off on some of that, Dave?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
So
yes.
Grace became the person who was on stage every weekend really quickly, but she was not the worship leader every single weekend.
Okay.
And so in order to develop her into that person, I was paying, there were 3 different people at the time. A guy that I went to college with who had a music degree and he's one of these traveling worship leaders, really skilled, but man, if he would just land,
traveling worship leaders,
right? If he would just land at one local church,
he won't commit.
He would crush it, and that congregation would be better for it. But there's I don't blame him. There's money to be made in the traveling circuit. Okay. So he would come to us and he did some trainings for Grace and taught her some things, but also once a month, he would lead our worship service. That was great. And then there were 2 women that I found in some local churches here that I needed to come and show Grace how to be a woman leading worship. And they came, both of them came 2 different times, once a month, and did that thing for us. And then on the 4th Sunday of the month, Grace was the worship leader. So she's doing behind the scenes things like sending emails, planning centers, service invites, developing those soft skills that we talk about in Leadership Pathway.
Okay.
And behind the scenes, we were teaching her through these outsourced people.
Yeah.
That happened for 6 months. We did that for 6 months with her. By January of her residency, I guess 2nd semester of her residency, she was the only worship leader we needed at that point.
Okay. All the other people were like, but what about my check? You just cut them loose.
Well, they knew the plan, right? You involve them in the vision of it. You're here to help our next person get ready to do her thing.
Okay.
And they were great, man. They were taking her out to coffees, meeting up with her. Like, you know, I was her primary coach in all this.
Yes. But
bringing in more people on the play was huge, especially these other women.
Give me the first 6 months. How many hours a week were you spending on this? What do you think? If you had to send us an honest bill and bill your time, right? An honest bill.
Yeah.
How many hours a week?
Oh,
you're checking her work. You're making all of that.
Yeah. 20 to 30
hours a week.
Yeah. Because I'm having to go behind her the first 6 months and follow up emails with volunteers in the worship ministry. I mean, I was the worship minister before she got here, in that in between time of the guy who didn't last long with us and Grace. And so like I was doing all the administrative work and following up behind her and teaching her how to program. And so every weekend we're sitting down looking at the service lineup, you know, and that's on top of, I was the youth minister at the time too. And I'm preaching, 25 weeks of the year. And, so like there's a lot going on.
A lot. That's a lot.
But you just put your head down and do it. Like during those times, I don't, I don't remember them as being grueling or, you know what I mean?
It's the first 6 months. Second 6 months. Second month, 7 to 12. Did the hours begin to drop for you?
They did, as far as the administrative things.
Okay.
And our one-on-one time changed as well because she moved away. We can get into that in a moment.
Okay.
I know you probably want to. But administratively, she had finally began to catch on to how to communicate with volunteers, how to program a service that is decent at that point.
Yeah.
And those were really her responsibilities.
Okay.
We didn't expect her to like be a pastor of people yet. So we were still picking up all that slack, but it cut down to, I would guess like 20 hours a week. It cut 10 hours out of my week, not having to do that extra stuff.
Okay. All right. First big aha for you that this was going to take this was going to take some work. Was there an early, like, I don't mean disaster, but either something was, man, that was a close one, or you were surprised by something on the negative side? And then I want you to give us a first positive, I guess, early on.
What do you mean? Like when did
I realize? Like I hear often, like, man, I just didn't know we would have to talk about these things. And for those of us that probably were just thrown in the deep end, and through our workaholism and daddy issues. Like the way we succeed through our 20s.
Speak for
when
yourself,
you're just
Dave.
like out, you're just working, and then you wake up and you get an intern or a resident, and you're like, wow, I didn't know I'd have to talk to her about this because no one talked to me about that. We remember it as if we're just naturally, we already had it together. But I mean, if we had video and we could watch the review, we know we didn't. But was there a moment you're like, I'm surprised I have to teach her this?
It was the like how to make the service. I've already said it a couple of times, how to plan the service,
right?
Transitions and things like that. At this point, I'm in church world for 10 years,
right?
But and I grew up in it. My dad had been a preacher for longer than that, and you know, I got 3 generations of preachers before me, and so it was surprising that I had to spend so much time talking about, here's how you say something in between that song to the next song.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it's natural for me. I don't have to think about it.
Right.
And Kristen, she coached me on that a lot, of how to coach Grace on that. And early on, I realized, oh man, I didn't mind the things like, here's how to write an email. You know, she's Gen Z, and you can say what you want about Gen Z, but communication skills may not be on the top of their abilities list.
Exactly. Right.
And so I was prepared for those things. The text me back when I text you kind of conversations. Yeah. Those didn't bother me. It was just surprising to have to teach how we do the practicals of ministry. Okay. Which I don't know. Maybe that sounds, I don't know.
No, I think first of all, everyone's experience is a little unique, right?
Yeah.
And I would say definitely what you're talking about, the surprise of early instruction or coaching. I think every person that we work with at any size church, rural or major metro area, has this conversation at some point in the first 6 months. Like, I didn't realize I'd have to tell them, and then there's something. Mm-hmm. And I think that's good learning. I also think it's not unique to small church. That's one of those, it just is, period. When you put yourself in and you say, we're going to develop this person, we're not just going to push them off the dock and expect them to swim. We're going to go with them. We're going to make sure they don't drown. We're going to make sure that they know what they're doing and slowly give them responsibility over these 6 months. I think you wind up in a conversation, and in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I can't believe I have to tell them this. But we do.
Yeah.
We do. Okay. First big, yes, I'm so glad we did this. What did it feel? What was it?
Week 1, really. I mean, honestly, because it was a relief to have just another body in the building.
Okay. Yeah.
But week 1, she started at CIY conference. We took the youth up to Lee University in Cleveland, Tennessee. And it was awesome to let her be the fun person on the trip. Okay. And I got to sit back and let her do those things.
Great.
So I knew immediately that her relational skills, her people pastoring skills, even though we didn't expect some of those things to begin, she had a really high ability walking through the door.
Okay.
And then it was her just raw talent, her musical ability, her ability to coach people. She was 20 when we hired her. And because of her background at Berkeley, Boston Conservatory, classical music training, she was able to coach some of our volunteers how to play music.
Great.
They know how to read sheet music, and now she does too. And that was awesome for them. And that was a really big relief.
You said she moved away, and then she moved away, you said, or something like that. Tell us about that.
Yeah. She had to finish her degree. So she enrolled at University of Georgia, and that's in Athens, which is an hour away from Conyers.
Yeah.
And I don't think I fully understood that meant she was going to live in Athens. Like, I knew it, but I didn't really understand it. But yeah, she lives an hour away and has since her second semester with us. So 6 months in, she's no longer in the office anymore. We required 25 hours of of being in office when
Okay.
she was here, and then overnight, no more office. And so we had to work through, how do we do FaceTimes and how do we do check-ins now? And what do we talk about when we get together? Because now there's no more like office camaraderie. We have to take time to be intentional about what we're talking about in between classes. She was taking a full load. So there was definitely a learning curve, but a lot of trust, kind of riding that wave. So
we say often that the busiest 20 to 25-year-olds develop quicker. They develop more quickly. They have to quickly come up to speed on how to use a calendar and sync it with the boss and the team. And they have to manage, if the fun, Kristen would say, and the coaches, if your fun's not in your calendar, you're not busy enough, right?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there was a lot of that going on. Full-time student, responsibilities back home with you, driving back and forth.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And I don't know, I don't see her name on this list, so she's not in attendance today. She was pumped that we were doing this.
Oh, cool. Yeah, right on.
But I don't think she was genuinely excited to show me that her Google Cal was full. Nice. As a 21-year-old, she was like, look at how color coded my calendar is. And I want to be like, cool. I've been doing that for a while. But she was excited. And so we celebrated that she had like a concert penciled into her calendar.
Right.
Among all of the other things that she had to get done on a weekly basis. And you're right. The busy ones develop faster because they're focused.
Yeah. Right? And we're not talking about working too much. There should be fun. There should be time off in that calendar. And if it's not there, you probably don't get it, Yeah. And if you can learn that at 20, 21, I mean, most of us are 30. Most of us we've gone through some really rough stuff before we learn that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Most. So that's good. That's a win. Okay. So she finished first year. She's how far in right now at this point?
We are, Kristen, slap it in the chat. Like how far are we? We were talking about it the other day. I think we're at the 19 or 20 month mark.
Okay.
So we're getting pretty close to the end of her residency officially.
Have you talked about that yet?
Yeah. Yep. She knows the path. So,
all right. So if we're thinking every 6 months, like we tend to do, so you roll into that second year. So you went from 30 hours to 20 hours. Did it get less? Did it turn back up and get more again? Or was it feeling like you're personally having to do less now because she's there?
I didn't feel like I had to do less until the 12-month mark.
Okay. That's
when I remember a definite difference in the way that I was overseeing her as a resident, but also the ministry that she was a part of.
Yep.
And so again, this kind of goes back to breaking that golden rule of leadership pathway is that even as a resident, I was beginning to treat her like a full-time minister, but she wasn't. She certainly wasn't being paid as a full-time minister.
Yep. Yeah.
But our requirements of her basically were to be here on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
To be present for youth.
Yeah.
And then to run your rehearsal with your Sunday morning team, and then be here on Sundays to run that stuff.
Well, listen, I was before this, I was on a Zoom this morning with a really large church up in Columbus area, and they only do 1 year. And we were talking about why to do a second year. And I said, well, it's very kind of your church to do the hardest part of a residency, which is the first 6 to 9 months. But you're missing this payoff, and it's a payoff for the resident too. Instead of going somewhere else and starting over again and having to win trust and be, getting into that second year where responsibility can really go up. Trust. I'm assuming your trust was going up. Her trust of you was going up. She had gone through a complete year cycle of ministry, and now we get into the second year, and I think this is the payoff. We never start on the page of we can't afford a middle school pastor, so let's get an intern. We don't start there. But I will tell you, in the second year, the reason to sustain these things, one reason to sustain them, is you get the payoff as a church. You've invested heavily, and this is a huge investment. And by the way, you're becoming the senior pastor. At some point, What'd they do? Call you up on stage and knighted you or something? Or how's that work in your denomination?
We had a missionary here anoint me with oil one Sunday. That was weird for me. But no, yeah, I was developing my team, and the elders knew that. And it was huge that when we started day one with Leadership Pathway, the conversation in the room was, okay, grace is great. We're going to do this thing. And I just had to look, my board in the eyes and say, you're agreeing that we're going to have our first ever female worship minister.
Yeah, right.
If we're doing this.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, not even a second ticked on the clock. Everybody was unanimous. Like, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
I didn't expect there to be pushback, but I mean, that's still significant, right?
Right.
That we're pursuing this with her, and that they believed in her enough to make that big time decision.
Right.
And they also believed in me enough to be able to develop her to do that. And I wanted her to be on my team from the beginning. And so it was worth that investment, and then paying off in that second year is big time.
I'm sure in the second year you've had moments where you're just wondering, she's got it, right? Like, we're not going to fail, are we? Like, either you're driving to church thinking about it, or you're going to bed thinking, I didn't talk to her today, but tomorrow is the thing. And hopefully that has to be in your mind a little bit.
Definitely. And more of those thoughts were around, are we cool enough to keep her? Because she's living in a college town, living in Athens. She's got college friends with college ministries. And there were college ministries who were trying to poach her away from us. Churches down in Athens who, she's got vocal ability and loves Jesus. She's highly desired by people.
Yeah, right on.
And so there were some nights, you go to bed. It's like, oh, I really hope she doesn't call me and tell me she doesn't want to do this anymore tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So give us the current snapshot. Where are we today with her? What's it feel like? What are you measuring? Maybe that might be something to think about. And then where's it going?
Well, I'll tell you this, for those small church people out there. Okay. Going back to my poll, 30% of you are on a staff between 3 and 5 people, 60%, 5 to 10 plus. Why did I say 5 to 10 plus? That gives me.
Well, I think I'm looking at who's in the chat room.
Okay.
Yeah. We might have some Leadership Pathway people that shouldn't have voted.
So it's likely that most of you who are in here today,
for sure,
you wear multiple hats, and you're planning services, or you're a part of the service planning. Listen, for the first time in 4 years, I did not plan one moment of our Easter service except the sermon this past weekend.
Oh, how about that? And
Grace planned all of it, and it was excellent. I mean, I cannot tell you how relieving that was for me this past weekend. I didn't have to send an email to a volunteer. I didn't have to make a phone call about rehearsal times. I didn't have to input anything into Planning Center services. Like, she asked me questions, and I gave my opinions, and she tested the waters on some stuff, but it was her plan from start to finish.
About that.
I knew when I was preaching, and that's what I did.
Listen, man, I guarantee you, if we could get 10 pastors on this right now, churches of 1,000 to 5,000, how many of you, is that your story for East? No. Nobody has that story. I only plan the sermon, and the full-time people, I didn't have to check in at all. Are you kidding? So you're sitting out there Easter Sunday on the front row or wherever you sit, and you're like, this is great.
Yep. Yeah.
And you're just going up there to preach. You were not walking towards the pulpit going, I can't believe it sounded like that, looked like that. So this is that's huge to me.
Big
as
time.
a worship guy that's planned some services. And I would say at a church of 300, it's harder to do than at a really big church where there's lots of paid professionals to make it awesome. At a church of 300, that is hard to do. So she does she even know what she's learning, I guess, at that point?
She does, because I tell her constantly.
That's it for you. That's amazing. That is amazing. Everybody that's here, you can drop a question in. We have a small rural church in Cape Town, South Africa. That's
Whoa, awesome.
Sandville, nice to have you.
You're planning everything literally. Yeah.
Yes,
we've all been there.
I'll do it. Yeah.
And there is no magic button to push that, if I get this person and I do leadership pathway, that this is, then I can release it in 2 years. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is, if you put in the effort to be the developer, you're going to have to do many things. You've got to be dynamic. And one of those things is going to be heavy development. Once a week, one-on-ones, as well as the constant interactions. We would sit down for an hour and a half and we would talk through our soft skill for that month. And then the next week we would build on that and go through some of those LP resources. That's a lot of extra time.
Yeah.
Every week to sit down. But the payoff has been huge, man.
Okay. So where's it going?
We're going to hire Grace.
Okay.
And an official part-time role.
Yeah.
Because she has one more year of school left.
Yeah.
So she will finish her senior year in Athens, an hour away. But her pastoral responsibilities will increase.
Amazing.
Her support for other ministries responsibility is going to increase. Essentially, she's growing into the programmer role of our church.
Great.
So not just Sunday morning programming, but assisting all departments in programming. And then after she graduates, we're going to hire her full time.
Yeah.
She'll move back to Conyers and be with us all the time, which
amazing.
And she knows all that. We have said all of that stuff and she's ready for it. So
we say often that residency is a two-way street, right? We're learning, they're learning from us, we're learning from them.
Yeah.
Someone named Kristen just asked in the chat, what have you learned from Grace?
I've learned how to be quiet more often.
Oh.
Yeah. I came out of the blocks sprinting.
Yeah.
And so every opportunity was a coaching opportunity.
Right.
And I think a few months in, it was like, I'm wearing her out because every conversation was serious. You know what I mean?
That's good.
Hey, that was great what you did on Sunday. Let's talk about how you did this though. Everything had one of those, what do you call that? Not a silver lining, but the other side of that.
Little teaching moment.
Yeah. And so I learned how to kind of calm down and stop talking as much and let her lead on some of those things. I've also learned what Gen Zs need.
They need
experience. They need experiences. Not experience in the workplace. They need a place where they can have experiences.
Oh, that's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's the difference in your mind?
Experience is like skills in the workplace. That's workplace experience mean they are gaining what they need to be successful in the workforce. What I'm saying is that she needs experiences. She needs a place where she can be authentically herself and worship Jesus with people who are also being authentically themselves. Free to worship how she needs to worship. And what's cool is that she's getting to lead those experiences now as our worship leader, and she's bringing a really fresh taste to how we sing some of the songs we've always sang on Sunday morning.
Right.
So that's been good to appreciate Gen Z rather than kind of kids these days kind of mindset.
Yeah.
That was good.
Well, in our master class in Cincinnati a few weeks ago, we had one of these moments the second day where it was sort of like kids these days, and the room sort of went dark for just about 30 seconds about how bad this next generation is. And this guy in the room, he's about your age, he's a middle school pastor, and he said, we have to think cross-culturally with Gen Z. We have to, just like we would in another culture. We don't go there anymore as the great hope teaching only. We go there to learn, to sit with them, to learn their language, to learn from them, allow them to serve us while we serve them. And this is a mutual two-way street thing. And I thought that was a great way to frame up. We can see that, in another country. We can go to there and not just have all the answers, but it's harder. It is harder. And I'm assuming, man, in a 60-year church with a faithful, long-run senior pastor and his wife, I'm assuming your church is not full of Gen Z aged people.
No, but we're growing in that demographic.
Sure.
When I interviewed for the job, 5-6 years ago,
right,
they told me, if you guys come, then young people are going to come too. And we were like, dude, I don't think that's how it works. But here we are, 5-6 years later.
Right.
And 3 weeks ago, in walks 3 brand new families who are all in their 30s with children who have to be checked into the children's ministry check-in desk. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
God really does just bring the people.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know any of them. I didn't invite them to church.
Right.
There they were.
How have you, I mean, she's obviously got some community her age, right? Where she's living at school. So that is not a huge deal for you. Like it would be potentially if she wasn't in school, right? I'm assuming that's been a benefit.
For her to be away at school at the same time?
Well, to be around people her age.
Yes, huge. Yeah, because I can't provide that piece for her. I can't be her friend, her, her peer. Right. I can't be that. And so as difficult as it was to let her go an hour away, she was gaining those friendships and, peer-to-peer relationships that she needed, which are crucial for her development, for everyone's development. Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can boil this off into the major points that I've heard you say.
So real fast, I'm getting, I've had a couple private messages.
Yeah.
I don't know if I doubt you see those. It says private next to them.
I don't.
Our friend Sanville, I think from Cape Town, wants to know, can one implement a leadership course in our church? And I'm assuming that means, can one person do this by themselves?
Oh, nice.
And so that's how I'm going to answer the question. If I'm wrong in that, please type it in the chat. Can one person create this leadership course in your church? I'm going to say no. One person I don't think can do this alone. I didn't do it alone. I had the support of all my elders. I had there were 5 elders on our board at that time. I also had the support of my lead pastor, who was my dad, and the other staff as well. And what they provided wasn't just go do it. They also provided some intentional conversations, and the other women on staff taking Grace out for lunch and talking about some things. And my elders, they supported Grace by occasionally throwing a gift card her way. We see you. We really have noticed your development. Here you go. And that was at a time when she needed that stuff. And so I just really, you could be a super dynamic person and be able to do everything under the sun. Right. But it took more than just me to get Grace to where she is today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you might have to do it with one.
Right.
So never say never.
Right.
But try and bring other people in on it. Maybe I don't know. I can go down a rabbit trail, but I had another question, if you don't mind.
No, go for it. Okay. Yeah, please.
I don't want to lose anybody. We're on for almost an hour now. I don't want to lose anybody. Okay. After you've invested in the individual and they decide to walk away, our objective is to prepare them for ministry while they're in the marketplace. Do they choose which path they will go into in the ministry? Okay. I feel like that's a multifaceted question. I'm just answering from my perspective.
Sure.
I wouldn't have hired Grace if I didn't want her to go into ministry with us. I was not preparing her for anything other than ministry. In fact, leadership pathway, we talk about all the time. We want to make you highly desirable for that ministry position, highly desirable and hireable for that ministry position. And so, we taught her some skills that would be good for any workplace, but our primary destination was our church and potentially another church, but that was our only thought process. Do they choose what path they're going into? No, we chose Grace because of the path she was already in. We needed her to help out with youth ministry a little bit, but we chose her for the music ministry. And I wouldn't. That's how I would hire. That's how I would hire a full-time person. I'm looking for somebody for this role. That's how I would also hire my next resident. Obviously what are their desires in life. I wouldn't stick a worship ministry person in children's ministry. Right? What are their qualifications? But we hired Grace specifically for one thing. So hopefully that answers your question.
Any other questions in your thing there?
I have no elders. I have no elder board. That's tough, man. That's tough. You've got to have a leadership team around you somewhere, though. Maybe it's not elders. It could just be some great people in your congregation who are running a shop down the street or stay home and work on the computer remote for somebody. There is somebody in your church who can do this thing with you, and you can sell them on it.
Right.
Yeah.
We've had situations even in sizable churches where the person coaching or our contact was not the staff leader. It was an elder. It was a elder spouse. It was another leader, dynamic person in the church or their spouse. And so, there's a lot of ways. I think it boils down to who wants to do it, who has the heart to look at the next generation and bring them along. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Who wants to see the church get to its next phase?
Yeah.
Like, who are those people that come to you every weekend? Like, great sermon. Oh, I just feel the energy in this place right now.
Yeah, I love it.
That's the kind of person who's going to put energy into a resident.
All right, here's what I've learned today. I'm going to bring it to a close. You can wrap us up in your radio voice, Curtis.
All right.
Number one, you did not, the things we should take from this, not necessarily specifically the way that it's played out for Grace and Crosspoint and for Curtis, but here's the principles that I heard. You didn't give her all of it the first week. You slowly gave her responsibility, very slowly, very patiently. It sounds to me like over 6 to 9 months. We should expect a time commitment. I don't want to put a number on it. Is it 1 hour or is it 30 hours? Curtis talked about 30 hours he was investing in the first 6 months, but expect some time. This is not a welcome to the team. Now do some stuff so I don't have to do it anymore. I think the time investment goes up and then eventually comes back down is what Curtis has described for us over these 21 months. Gen Z needs experiences. And I love that, man. I think there's a blog post there. What's work experiences? What's work experience versus experiences? Gen Z, young leaders, young would-be leaders need experiences in your church. Expect a payoff. It sounds like you expected this to go well, and it has gone well, and you still have expectations of moving forward with her.
Absolutely.
And I think, listen, if she quits tonight and you had to start over, that would be awful. I mean, I don't want to end on, but I would just say, we should expect this. We should work and do the work and expect a payoff in these things. And we're going to learn from them. You're learning from her. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, those 5 things is what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
nailed it.
Of everyone, at least that I can know who's on here, you're the senior pastor at the church of a couple hundred who's done a residency. Leave us with a comment, speak to those people, because there will be some watching this since we're recording, watching in the future. So what do you say to the church of 200 or 300, the 30s, the old millennial? You're an old millennial senior pastor at a church like that. What do you say to them?
It's been preached to me because I am where I am because of those older than me. and I'm just trying to do the next thing. So I would say if you want to continue the ministry of the church and leave a legacy for the next generation, you've got to invest in that next generation now.
Yeah.
You have to do it. And it's a lot of work. I'm 30. I was the next I'm 31, excuse me. Get it right. I was invested in by the boomer generation and the Gen X. Now the millennial is investing in the Gen Z, and we're already trying to look down the road. We've got kids in our youth group who fit. This little girl named Kaylee, she's a junior. She is going to be, I mean, unless she decides to do something else, she's going to be a resident with us. Yeah, she just is. Good. And she's 10 years younger than our current resident. That's just the way it has to be. Yeah, it's awesome.
I love it. Thanks, man. Thanks, Curtis. Thanks for the time.
Thank you.
Everybody, thanks for being here. Don't forget the links that I dropped in there as we were starting. The PDF you can take a look at the master class and where it's coming. Maybe it's coming to your town, close to you. And we'll see you next month. Next month, there's a 25-year-old who is named Austin Rockwell from Phoenix, who is leading a college ministry. And we're going to be talking a little deeper on who are Gen Z and how do we help them do the things that Curtis has been talking about when they come onto our team. Where do we find them and how do we get them?
Do not miss that one. I'm telling
it's
you.
Going to be great.
I didn't know it was Austin.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. Don't miss it.
All right, everybody. Thank you. See you.